If you want to enjoy all the benefits of 10-bit color depth with your Mavic 3, then you need to shoot with the D-Log color profile, which to the uninitiated is a bit of a horror show when it comes to color correction and color grading. But it's not that complicated. I'm going to show you how to do it quite easily with and without LUTs. Right, let's get into it now. Stuart Carroll here, pleasure to talk to you as always. Right, we're talking about the Mavic 3, which means we've got our big boy pants on today. We're playing with the grown-ups. So as I'm sure you know, this drone shoots a really flat D-Log color profile. The logic being that we can retain all that dynamic range in your shadows and your highlights. You can then stretch out in post and benefit from all that color depth. If you take only one thing away from this video, it is the following: color correct before you color grade. With color correction, we're talking about white balance adjustments, saturation adjustments, and contrast adjustments. That then gives us the baseline upon which we can build our grade, so the stylized look, going for a kind of blockbuster look or vintage look or whatever the case may be. Well, in the case of this shot, the image is so lacking in contrast that it's really hard to see what's going on. So we need some objective measure of contrast so we can see a before and after. We can understand what the adjustments are that we've made. This is precisely why we have our waveform displayed. 100 is white and 0 is black. Now, as you can see, everything is jammed in the middle here, shades of grey essentially. The luminance is all concentrated around 25 to 50. We need to stretch that out. Let's go into our color panel. By default, we're given a color board. Make sure we're on the exposure settings, and let's take our highlights up to just under 100, and let's pull our shadows all the way down to 0, give or take. As you can see, the highlights have come down again, so let's push them all the way back up and keep bringing those shadows down. Okay, that gives us something of a better contrast. Although it's an improvement, it's still not where I want to be, but first things first, now we can actually see the image because we have some contrast. Let's add some saturation in so we can see the colors that we're playing with. Okay, right, now that starts to make a little bit of sense. And if we look at a before and after, great. It's a starting point, and as you can see, look at the waveform on the left there, look at the way it jumps, before, after, complete transformation. Although this image is better, I'm still not happy with it. I think it lacks contrast. Now, how can that be? We've stretched our whites up to 100, give or take, and we've pulled our blacks all the way down to 0, give or take. What can we do? Let's make a curves adjustment. The dot on the lower left of the luma curve corresponds to the black point that we just set on the color board. The dot on the upper right of the luma curve corresponds to the white point that we just set on the color board. The beauty of the curves adjustment is we can alter the image's contrast within the predefined range of black and white that we just set previously. Easier if I demonstrate. When I grab the curve in the middle and make an adjustment, watch the waveform there. Look at it all slide up and down, but the black and white points that we set previously do not change. And this is the beauty of the curves adjustment. Let me pull this down because this is ultimately what I want to do. I want to add contrast within the predefined black and white points that were already set. To finalize our contrast adjustment, I'm going to go back into the color board and just nudge those highlights up even more because we do have some whites in this image, the clouds, and I think we can just get them a little bit closer to 100. There we go. That is a color corrected clip that forms the baseline upon which we can then build our color grade, the second stage of the process. There's a second approach to trying to get your footage to this normalized color corrected baseline, and that is using DJI's own Mavic 3 LUT. It will take this D-Log footage and transform it into Rec 709 footage. Back inside Final Cut Pro, let's search for the custom LUT option. We drag that onto the clip. And we've already got this preloaded, but here we have the DJI Mavic 3 D-Log to Rec 709 version 1 LUT. Apply that, boom. Okay, let's switch that on and off and check the waveform there on the left. Off, same as before. On, as you can see, it stretched things out. We've also had quite a considerable amount of saturation added. So by all means, this is a great starting point for further work, but there's a reason why I wanted you to learn how to do it yourself. I want you to be in control of your color correction and therefore your color grade. If we look at the waveform, things are still fairly flat. Our highlights or our whites are nowhere near 100 and our blacks are nowhere near 0. Added to that, what if you wanted to do that curves trick to add some contrast within those white and black points? This LUT doesn't get you there, it's just a starting point. Now in reality, if I'm going to have to go in here and make a contrast and potentially saturation adjustment anyway, I might as well just do it myself from scratch. So let's modify this a little bit. Go into the color panel again, let's stretch out that exposure and contrast because I think it can take it. We'll pull that contrast down. Saturation looks good, but we want some contrast within those black and white points. So we add a color curve, grab the middle of the color curve, pull it down. There we go. It just pops a bit better. I think it looks nicer. And now, once again, we have a starting point for our color grade. The other reason I want you to know how to do this all yourself from the ground up is because the color correction you do on one clip won't necessarily work perfectly with every other clip. Assuming you filmed everything perfectly consistently on the day itself, which is of course a massive assumption, you're not always going to be able to copy and paste your settings across because lighting conditions change. Now, in this first example, I'll show you the lighting condition changes mid-shot because the camera moves to a darker part of the image. And also in this clip, you'll see that Alina is standing in the shade, whereas previously she was standing in the sunshine. Now that we have every clip in our project color corrected, we can apply our color grade. Now, unlike color correction, we've certainly had a bit more luck applying a one-size-fits-all color grade. We've equalized all our footage. We can now just make those color adjustments to the whole thing, assuming the clips are relatively similar. So in this instance, we're going to drag an adjustment layer down on top of all of our clips, and we'll make our color corrections to that adjustment layer, and we should get an okay result. Just by way of demonstration, I think the greens in this image are a little bit zingy, so I'm going to make a hue saturation curve adjustment here using the hue versus hue dropper to select the greens, and I'm just going to pull them up a little bit and just see that I've just taken the color, I added a bit of red actually is what's been done there, but it's just given them a warmer tone and I think it's a bit more natural. And that's just been made to those greens. Similarly, if I wanted to make an adjustment to the sky, for example, I could. But there you go. I think that's a nice little adjustment, and that's the color grade. Let's look across the other clips. Yep, it's done a nice job there. I'll switch the adjustment layer off and on. Yep, you can see the greens are de-zinged on that clip. If we go to the first clip, same story. Zingy, bluey, vivid greens, reddy, autumnal greens. Alternatively, this is a good time to apply a color grading LUT. So we apply our custom LUT to the adjustment layer. And let's say for our LUTs, we have some LUTs that we created. Let's take the Braemar one. I like that already. It's coming really nicely on this footage. Let me switch it off for a second. All right, watch the blues and the greens. Look at the blue there. It's kind of desaturated, a little bit of teal kind of added to it. It's got a kind of silvery touch. And if you look at the greens, it's had that de-zing effect applied. A little bit of a washout on the shadows as well for a slightly vintagey look, and bish bash bosh, we are done. Our LUTs are purely grading LUTs. You will not find contrast, saturation, or white balance adjustments in those LUTs, just color adjustments. It's the icing on the cake on already good footage that's been color corrected to a normalized level. The vast amount of LUTs that I've ever seen promoted include all kinds of contrast and saturation adjustments in addition to those cool color adjustments. And to be honest with you, that just simply doesn't work because the creator of that LUT has no idea what exposure you shot your footage on, has no idea what color correction you may or may not make in post-production before applying that LUT, especially if you're trying to equalize or level out or balance different clips from different sources and all that kind of stuff. You need to be the one who sets your baseline in terms of color correction, and then you can apply the grade. That, folks, is how you color correct and color grade footage from any camera, not just your Mavic 3. And if you take this approach, you'll be able to balance out footage from different sources, a ground camera, an iPhone, and your drone, and make it all look seamless and perfect and work together.